The afternoon sun was soft, but in the streets of the city it felt heavy on the shoulders of a poor family walking slowly together. The father's jacket was too thin for the season, the mother's dress was faded from too many washes, and the two small children walked close, holding onto their parents' hands. The little boy's shoes were worn out completely, the fabric torn, the sole almost falling off. Every step made a soft scratching sound against the sidewalk, and the boy kept looking down at his feet as if he wanted to hide them. The mother noticed his sad face and smiled gently. Even though her own heart was heavy, she whispered softly, "Don't worry, maybe today we can find something for you." The boy's eyes lit up for a moment. He had been wishing for new shoes for months, not fancy ones, not shining ones, just shoes without holes that would keep his feet warm. As they turned the corner, a store caught their eyes. The windows were bright, filled with mannequins wearing beautiful clothes and children's shoes neatly lined up in rows. The little boy stopped walking and pressed his small hand against the glass. His eyes sparkled as he looked at the shining sneakers displayed under the lights. He pointed excitedly and said, "Mom, look, these ones, they're so nice." The father looked at the prices written in small print below the shoes and sighed quietly. He knew they were far too expensive for him. His job barely paid enough for rent and food, but he didn't want to crush his son's happiness. So he nodded slowly and said, "Let's just go inside and see. Maybe we can find something simple." The family entered the store with slow steps. Their appearance stood out immediately. The store was quiet, polished, and smelled faintly of leather and perfume. The floor reflected the lights above, and customers moved with grace as if they belonged to another world. The poor family looked out of place, but the children's eyes were wide with wonder. They had never been inside such a store before. The little boy tugged on his father's hand and whispered, "Can I try them on just once?" His voice was filled with innocent hope. The father glanced at his wife, who gave him a tired but supportive nod. Together they walked toward the shoe section. Their steps echoed softly in the large room, and every movement felt like it carried weight. The boy bent down to touch one of the sneakers. His small fingers brushed against the clean, white surface. He smiled as if he had just touched a treasure. The mother's heart ached. She wished more than anything she could give this small joy to her child. But the heavy truth sat on her shoulders like a stone. She had only a few dollars in her purse, not nearly enough for even the simplest pair. Still, they stood there together as a family, quietly admiring the shoes. For a few minutes, it almost felt like they belonged. The little girl giggled and said, "One day I'll wear those shiny shoes too," her brother laughed. And for a moment the sadness faded. The parents exchanged a soft glance, knowing their children's laughter was worth more than gold. But behind the counter, the store owner had been watching. His eyes narrowed as he studied the family. Their old clothes, their tired faces, the boys' broken shoes. He did not see hope in their eyes. He only saw people who did not belong in his store. He whispered something under his breath, shaking his head. The father picked up a shoe carefully, trying not to damage it. His rough hands trembled slightly as he placed it back. He turned to his son and said, "Maybe we'll just ask how much they are." The boy's eyes shone with excitement and his small heart beat fast. He imagined walking out of the store wearing them, running freely without feeling the ground through the holes in his shoes. The family moved closer to the counter, their steps unsure but full of hope. The mother held her daughter's hand tightly, whispering encouragement. The father cleared, his throat preparing to speak. He was nervous, but he wanted to try. He wanted his children to believe that dreams were possible, even if only for a moment. And so, in that polished, shining store filled with strangers who looked down at them, a poor family stood quietly together, their hearts full of love for one another, their dreams small but pure. They had no idea that within moments their lives would take a turn. Not because of money, not because of luck, but because someone unexpected was watching, waiting to step forward when they needed it most. The family stood nervously in the shining store. The boy still looked at the sneakers with wide eyes, his little hands pressed against his father's arm as if asking silently, "Please don't leave without asking." The father took a slow breath, his chest heavy with both hope and fear. He had no idea what the answer would be, but he knew he had to try for his son. Before he could step forward, the store owner appeared. His polished shoes clicked against the floor as he walked. His face carried a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. He stopped in front of the family and looked them up and down. His eyes lingered on their old clothes. The faded jacket, the frayed edges of the mother's dress, the broken shoes on the boy's feet. The smile on his lips disappeared quickly and turned into a frown. "Can I help you?" the man asked, but his tone wasn't kind. It was sharp, like a knife cutting through the small bubble of hope the family had. The father cleared his throat, trying to stay polite. He said quietly, "We were just looking, maybe checking the prices." The man's eyebrows rose and his eyes grew colder. The mother quickly added, "My son liked those shoes, we just wanted to see how much they cost." Her voice was soft, careful. She didn't want to draw attention. She only wanted her child to feel normal for once, to stand in a store like other children and dream. But instead of showing kindness, the store owner's lips twisted into a sneer. He stepped closer, lowering his voice but making sure everyone nearby could hear. "This is not the place for people like you," he said. His words carried poison. His eyes scanned them again as if they were dirt on the floor. "If you cannot afford anything, then don't waste our time." The boy's head dropped instantly. His small shoulders curled as if trying to disappear into the ground. The little girl gripped her mother's hand tightly, her eyes filling with confusion and fear. The father's jaw clenched. He wanted to defend his family, but his throat felt dry. He swallowed hard, trying to hold back the sting of shame. Other customers glanced at them. Some looked away quickly, pretending not to notice. Others watched with curiosity, but no one spoke. The silence in the room grew louder than the owner's cruel words. The mother tried once more, her voice trembling. "Please, sir, we didn't mean harm. We just wanted to see." The owner's laugh echoed through the store, but it was not filled with joy. It was sharp and mocking. He leaned closer and whispered harshly, "Do not play innocent with me. I know your type. You walk in here, touch everything, then leave. Without buying or worse, you steal." The father's heart pounded in his chest, his hands tightened into fists at his sides, his son's eyes filled with tears. The boy whispered, "We're not thieves, Dad. We're not." The words cut into the father's heart like blades. His child should never have to defend his innocence. He should never have to feel guilty just for wanting shoes. The store owner raised his hand and gestured toward the door. "Out," he ordered coldly. "You don't belong here." His voice was loud this time, filled with authority. The staff at the counter froze, unsure whether to act. The poor family stood frozen too, caught between humiliation and disbelief. The mother bent down to her son. Brushing his tears away with her trembling fingers, she whispered, "It's all right, my love, it's not your fault." Her voice was breaking, but she forced a smile to comfort him. The little girl tugged on her father's arm, her eyes wide, and scared. She didn't understand why they were being treated like this. The father took his wife's hand and turned slowly, ready to leave. His back felt heavy, his pride crushed. He wanted to shout, to argue, to demand respect, but his children's frightened faces held him back. He could not make a scene. He only wanted to protect them from more pain. The store owner followed them a few steps, as if making sure they didn't dare touch anything else. His voice echoed one last time. "Don't come back, you hear me? This place is for real customers, not beggars." His words were like knives, stabbing again and again. The boy's face turned red. He pressed his small fists against his eyes, trying not to cry louder. The father bent down, pulling his son close. To his chest, his heart ached, but he whispered, "Don't listen to him, you're better than this." His voice was low, filled with pain, but also with love. For a moment, the entire store seemed to hold its breath. No one dared to speak. No one dared to move. The poor family, broken by humiliation, prepared to walk back into the cold street. The father's shoulders bent under the weight of shame, the mother's steps heavy, the children's dreams shattered in just a few cruel words. But as they reached the door, someone's gaze followed them. Someone who had been standing silently all this time, watching, thinking. His eyes were calm but sharp, His heart stirred with anger at the injustice he had just witnessed. He was about to take a step that would change everything. The air inside the store grew heavy. Every sound seemed louder. The ticking of the clock on the wall, the rustle of clothes on hangers, the quiet whispers of other customers who tried to pretend they weren't watching. The poor family stood, frozen near the door, hearts pounding, faces burning with humiliation. The boy clutched his father's hand tightly, his small fingers trembling. His little sister hid her face in her mother's dress, too scared to look up. The store owner crossed his arms and glared at them, his lips curled into a cruel smile as if he enjoyed their pain. "I told you to leave," he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "This store is not for people like you." His words echoed, and the silence that followed was even more painful. The father tried to hold his head high, but his pride was bleeding inside. He whispered gently to his son, "Come on, let's go." His voice shook, but he forced it to stay calm. He didn't want his children to see how much it hurt him. The boy's lips trembled, and in a small, broken voice he whispered, "Dad, we didn't do anything wrong." The mother's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to scream, to fight back. But instead she bent down and hugged her children tightly. Her heart broke as she felt her son's tiny body shaking against her. "Shh, it's all right," she whispered, though her voice was unsteady. "Don't cry, my love, don't cry." But her own tears slid silently down her cheeks. The store owner wasn't done. He stepped forward, waving his hand like shooing away insects. "You people always waste my time," he sneered. "Always coming in, touching things you can't afford, embarrassing real customers. Beggars should stay in the street, not here." His words stabbed into the air, sharp and heartless. The father's fists clenched at his sides. His face burned with anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. For a moment he thought about shouting, about telling the man exactly how wrong he was. But then he looked at his son's tear-streaked face, at his daughter's frightened eyes, and he swallowed the anger down. He knew he couldn't let his rage explode. He couldn't let them see him lose control. The little boy couldn't hold it in anymore. He looked up at the store owner with wet eyes and cried, "We are not thieves. We are not beggars." His small voice broke in the middle of the sentence, trembling with pain. He clung to his father's hand as if it was the only safe place left in the world. His words, so pure and full of truth, should have softened the store owner's heart, but they didn't. Instead, the man laughed, a cruel, bitter sound. "Oh, really?" he said. "Then why are your shoes falling apart? Why do you dress like this? Don't lie to me, I know you're kind." He looked around at the other customers as if asking for approval, but no one dared to speak. They shifted uncomfortably, pretending to browse clothes, pretending not to see, but their silence screamed, louder than words. The mother covered her son's ears with her hands as if trying to shield him from the poison in the man's voice. Her tears kept falling, not just from sadness but from helplessness. She had faced hardship before, hunger, cold nights, but this humiliation, this cruelty in front of her children was too much to bear. The father placed a gentle hand on his wife's shoulder and guided her toward the door. His heart felt like it was being crushed, but he whispered, "Let's just leave. We don't need this." He tried to keep his voice strong, but each word was heavy. His son and daughter followed, their steps small and weak. As they moved closer to the door, The store owner raised his voice once more. Yes, go. Don't ever come back. You don't belong here. His voice echoed through the store, and this time it was followed by silence, so deep that even the sound of the family's footsteps seemed too loud. The boy turned his head one last time. His eyes filled with tears, looked back at the sneakers he had admired only minutes ago. He didn't understand why wanting shoes was a crime. He didn't understand why kindness was so rare. His little chest rose and fell quickly as he held back sobs. The father saw his son's gaze and felt his heart split in two. He wanted to tell him that the world could be better, that people could be kinder. But in that moment, with the laughter of the store owner behind them and the silence of the crowd pressing on them, he had no words left. He just pulled his son closer, holding him tight as they reached for the door. The mother kept her head down, hiding her tears from the world. The little girl clung to her arm, too young to understand fully but old enough to feel the sting of rejection. The family looked like shadows slipping out of a place where they were never welcomed. But as they reached the door, the air in the room shifted. From the back of the store, a calm voice broke the silence. A presence that had been unnoticed until now was about to step forward. Someone had watched everything. Someone whose eyes had not turned away. Someone whose heart could not stay silent. And though the family did not know it yet, their humiliation was about to turn into something unforgettable. A lesson was about to be taught, not just to the cruel store owner, but to everyone who had stayed silent. And the one who would deliver that lesson was no ordinary man. The family's footsteps were heavy as they moved toward the exit. The father's grip on his son's hand was firm, trying to guide him out before more hurtful words were thrown their way. The boy's cheeks were still wet with tears. His little sister pressed close to their mother's side. The store had become a cage of shame, every corner filled with silent eyes that judged but never helped. But then from the back of the store a sound broke the heavy silence. It was not loud, not harsh, but calm and steady. A voice that carried weight without needing to shout. "Excuse me," the voice said, and the room seemed to freeze. The father stopped walking. The mother lifted her head, and even the store owner turned quickly, annoyed that someone dared to interrupt. The man who had spoken began to walk forward. His steps were slow, measured, yet full of quiet authority. He wore simple clothes, a cap pulled low over his head, and dark glasses that hid his eyes. At first glance, he looked ordinary, like any other customer, but there was something different about the way he carried himself. People instinctively moved aside as he passed, as if some invisible force made space for him. He stopped a few feet, away from the poor family, his gaze fixed on the store owner. For a long moment he didn't say a word. He just looked, and the silence was heavier than any insult. The store owner shifted uncomfortably, trying to put his fake smile back on. "Yes, sir, can I help you?" he asked, his tone suddenly polite. But the man didn't answer. Instead, he turned his head slightly, his glasses catching the store lights, and looked at the family. The mother felt her heart race. There was something kind, something steady. In his presence, the little boy peeked from behind his father's arm, sensing something unusual. His small chest still rose and fell quickly, but his eyes stayed fixed on the stranger. The man slowly reached up and removed his glasses. For a second, the store seemed to gasp. Whispers spread quickly among the customers, eyes widening in disbelief. It was Keanu Reeves. The quiet man who had been standing in the corner all this time was one of the most famous actors in the world. The store owner's face went pale. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked like a child caught stealing cookies, nervous and desperate to fix his mistake. He quickly changed his expression into an exaggerated smile. "Oh, Mr. Reeves," he stammered. "What an honor to have you here, please. How can I help you today?" His voice shook, and the arrogance that had been so strong a moment ago was gone. But Keanu ignored him completely. He turned fully to the little boy, bending down to his level. His face softened with a warm smile. "Hey there," he said gently. "What shoes were you looking at?" The boy blinked, unsure if he was dreaming. He looked at his parents, then back at Keanu, his small voice barely a whisper. "Those ones," he said, pointing toward the sneakers in the display. Keanu's smile grew. He nodded slowly. They're nice, very nice, he said. Why don't you try them on? The boy's eyes widened, his mouth opening in shock. The store owner took a quick step forward, trying to interrupt. Mr. Reeves, they can't. But Keanu raised one hand calmly, and the man stopped, as if the air had been knocked from his chest. Keanu's voice was quiet but firm. I wasn't talking to you. The crowd inside the store watched closely now. Some people pulled out their phones, others simply stared. No one could look away. The mother's eyes filled with tears again, but this time not from humiliation, from hope, from the sudden kindness shining in front of her. The father stood, frozen, unable to believe what was happening. Keanu turned back to the boy. Go on, he said. Let's see how they look on you. His tone was gentle, patient. The boy's hands trembled as he slowly stepped forward. A store worker, nervous, under Keanu's gaze, hurried to bring the shoes and knelt down to help the boy put them on. The boy's face lit up as the sneakers slid onto his feet. They were soft, clean, and perfect. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he belonged. The little girl clapped her hands excitedly. They look so good on you, she cried. Her laughter echoed in the store like sunshine breaking through dark clouds. The mother covered her mouth, tears spilling freely now. The father's chest swelled with emotion. He whispered softly, Thank you, though the words seemed too small for the moment. Keanu stood up slowly. The store owner's face turned red. I didn't mean, he tried, but Keanu cut him off. Intentions don't erase harm, he said coldly. You showed your true self when you thought no one important was watching. And that is what makes it worse. Your heart judged them before your mouth spoke. The customers in the store shifted, nodding quietly. Some whispered to each other, agreeing with Keanu's words. The staff at the counter avoided the owner's gaze. Their faces pale. They knew this moment would not be forgotten. Keanu then softened his tone slightly, though his eyes stayed sharp. Every person deserves respect, whether they wear old shoes or the finest suit, whether they are rich or poor. It does not change their worth. You looked at them and saw nothing. I looked at them and saw a family full of love and dignity. And you should have seen that too. The store owner wiped sweat from his forehead, his mouth dry. He looked like a child being scolded. But this time no excuse could save him. Keanu's words carried too much truth, and the audience around them made sure he could not escape. The father finally spoke, his voice trembling but firm. We only came here for our son. We never wanted trouble. We never asked for pity. We only wanted kindness. His words echoed in the silence, and even though they were soft, they struck the owner harder than a shout. Keanu placed a hand on the father's shoulder, steadying him. And you should never have had to explain that, he said quietly. His voice was full of empathy. The father's eyes watered, and he nodded slowly. The store owner tried again. Please, Mr. Reeves. I'll make it up. I'll give them a discount. Free shoes if that's what you want. His voice cracked with desperation. He wanted to buy back his dignity with money, but Keanu's expression didn't change. No, Keanu said firmly. This is not about discounts, it's not about free shoes, it's about respect, and that can't be bought. His voice was calm, but it thundered, louder than any shout. The customers nodded again, their respect for Keanu growing by the second. The little girl, still clutching her mother's dress, suddenly spoke in her innocent voice. Mama, he's teaching him a lesson. Her words made some of the customers smile softly. It was true. Keanu wasn't just buying shoes. He was showing everyone what real strength looked like. The store owner finally lowered his head, ashamed. His fake smile was gone, replaced by the look of a man defeated by his own actions. He muttered weakly, I was wrong. But his words were too late. They sounded hollow, forced. Keanu looked at him one last time. his voice low but powerful. Kindness costs nothing, but cruelty can cost you everything. Remember that. The store owner's shoulders slumped. He had no reply. He could only stand there as his staff and customers silently judged him. The boy looked up at Keanu with wide eyes, his admiration glowing brighter than ever. To him, Keanu wasn't just an actor anymore. He was a hero who had defended his family when no one else dared. The mother squeezed her daughter's hand, her heart overflowing with gratitude. The father stood taller than before, the weight of shame replaced by dignity. The lesson had been delivered not with anger, not with violence, but with truth spoken in a way that no one could ignore. And in that moment, the entire store felt different. It no longer belonged to the cruel owner. It belonged to the truth, to kindness, to the power of one man's courage to stand up for what was right. The store was still quiet after Keanu's words. The customers stared. The staff froze behind the counter, and the store owner stood like a man who had been stripped of all his pride. His earlier arrogance had melted into fear and shame. He had no control anymore, and everyone knew it. The poor family, who only minutes ago had been humiliated, now stood at the center of attention with dignity, slowly returning to their hearts. Keanu glanced at the boy's sneakers and smiled. His voice was gentle again, but still strong enough for everyone to hear. These shoes are not just for walking. They are a reminder that no child should feel small in front of anyone. He turned toward the cashier. "Ring them up, I'll pay." The cashier nodded quickly, almost eager, and began preparing the box. But Keanu didn't stop there. He looked at the mother, whose eyes were red from tears. "What about you?" he asked kindly. "Do you see something you like?" She shook her head immediately, embarrassed. "No, sir, we don't need anything else." Keanu smiled warmly. "It's not about need, it's about worth, and you are worth it." His words were so simple, yet they carried so much weight that her knees almost weakened. She pressed her daughter closer to her, her lips trembling. He then turned to the little girl, who had been hiding behind her mother. Her big eyes peeked out with curiosity. "Come on, sweetheart," Keanu said gently. "Show me what you like." The girl hesitated for a moment, then pointed shyly at a small dress displayed nearby. It was light pink, with tiny flowers stitched along the edges. Keanu grinned. "Perfect choice," he said. "Let's get it for you." The girl's eyes widened and she whispered, "Really?" He nodded. "Really?" The father stepped forward, his hands shaking. "Sir, this is too much. We cannot let you." But Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder, calm and steady. "You can let me," he said softly, "because today I want your family to feel seen, to feel respected, that's all." The father's throat tightened and he could only nod, his eyes glistening with tears he tried to hide. The store owner watched helplessly as Keanu moved with quiet authority. His mouth opened as if to protest, but no words came. He knew no one would side with him now. Every pair of eyes in the room was against him. Customers who once stayed silent now glared at him with disapproval. A few even shook their heads at him, muttering under their breath. The weight of his cruelty was now laid bare for everyone to see. Keanu walked back to the counter, his presence commanding but never harsh. "Pack these items," he instructed the cashier, "and add a few more for them. Shoes, clothes, whatever they may need, put it all on my bill." The cashier's eyes widened but nodded quickly, rushing to obey. The staff, who earlier had been frozen, now hurried around the store, carefully choosing items. The boy looked up at his mother, his face glowing. "Mama, is this real?" he whispered. She bent down, cupping his face in her trembling hands. "Yes, my love," she whispered back. "This is real." For the first time that day, her voice didn't shake with fear. It shook with gratitude. The girl tugged on her mother's sleeve and whispered excitedly, "He's like a guardian angel." Her innocent words made the mother cry even more, but these were tears of joy, not humiliation. When the staff brought the bags filled with clothes and shoes, Keanu paid without even glancing at the total. He signed the receipt calmly and handed the bags to the father. "Take these," he said. Not as charity, but as a reminder that your family matters, that you are no less than anyone else. The father's hands trembled as he accepted them. His voice cracked. I don't know how to thank you. Keanu smiled. You don't have to, just keep walking proudly. Then Keanu turned his gaze back to the store owner, his eyes sharp now, his words calm but cutting. You see, respect cannot be sold. It cannot be measured in money. It's given freely, and when you refuse to give it, you lose everything. The store owner lowered his head, unable to meet his eyes. For once, the man who had mocked others now stood in silence, shamed by his own actions. Some customers began clapping softly, breaking the silence. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. The sound of approval spread through the store. People nodded in agreement. A few even whispered, "That's Keanu Reeves, always humble, always kind." The store owner's face turned red with humiliation. He had been defeated not by anger, but by truth. The boy hugged Keanu again, squeezing tightly. "Thank you, sir," he said, his small voice trembling with happiness. Keanu knelt and hugged him back, whispering, "Be strong, little one. The world will try to tell you otherwise, but never forget your worth." The boy nodded quickly, as if sealing the promise in his heart forever. The mother tried to speak, but her tears made it hard. "You gave us more than gifts," she managed. "You gave us dignity." Keanu simply smiled. No one should ever take that from you, as the family prepared to leave, their arms filled with bags, their hearts overflowing with relief. The atmosphere of the entire store felt different. The cruelty that had poisoned the air before was gone, replaced with hope and quiet. The bags of clothes and shoes rested in the father's trembling hands. He felt their weight, but it wasn't heavy with shame anymore. It was heavy with dignity, with the kindness of a man who had stepped forward when no one else dared. The mother held her daughter close, her heart overflowing with emotions she could not put into words. The little boy looked down at his new sneakers and lifted his feet again and again, as if he still couldn't believe they belonged to him. His smile was brighter than the lights above. Keanu stood near them, calm and steady. His presence filled the store like sunlight breaking through dark clouds. The customers whispered softly, some smiling, some still in awe. They knew they had witnessed something rare, something more powerful than wealth or fame. The staff avoided, the store owner's eyes embarrassed to be working under a man who had shown such cruelty. The store owner remained frozen behind the counter. His head hung low, his pride shattered. He wanted to speak, to explain himself. But the words stuck in his throat. No excuse could erase what everyone had seen. No money could buy back the respect he had lost. Keanu turned to the family, his voice gentle now. "It's time to go," he said. "Walk out proudly, with your heads held high, because you deserve it." The father's chest swelled, and for the first time in years, he stood taller. He nodded slowly, his eyes wet with tears but his face strong. As they moved toward the door, the little girl whispered to her mother, "Mama, it feels like we're walking in a dream." The mother kissed her forehead softly, whispering back, "No, my love, this is real. Sometimes goodness finds us when we least expect it." The boy walked beside Keanu, glancing up at him with shining eyes. He whispered, "You're like a superhero." Keanu chuckled softly, bending down so only the boy could hear. "No," he said kindly. "The real heroes are parents like yours, who fight every day to protect their children. Don't forget that." The boy nodded, the words sinking into his small but brave heart. The family reached the door, but before they stepped outside, Keanu turned back to face the store one last time. His gaze swept across the room, from the customers to the staff to the trembling owner. The silence grew heavy again. Waiting for his final words, his voice was calm, steady, and carried like thunder without needing to rise. "Remember this," he said. "Kindness is free, but cruelty costs more than you can afford. Today you saw what happens when someone is judged for their clothes, for their shoes, for their poverty. And today you also saw that dignity can be restored with respect. Choose which side you stand on." The customers lowered their heads, ashamed for their silence earlier. Some nodded, realizing they should have spoken up. The staff looked down too, silently promising themselves to never allow such cruelty again. The store owner clutched the counter, his face pale. Keanu's words had cut deeper than any punishment, because they carried truth that could not be denied. With that, Keanu gently guided the family out. The glass doors opened, and the sunlight spilled onto their faces. The little boy stepped onto the street with his new shoes, his steps light and free. His sister twirled in excitement, clutching the small dress in her bag. The mother wiped her tears, but her smile shone brighter than any jewel in the store. The father carried the bags, his back straight, his heart lighter than it had been in years. Outside, people walking by turned their heads, surprised to see Keanu Reeves with an ordinary family. He didn't care about the stares or the whispers. All that mattered was the joy on the children's faces and the dignity restored to the parents. He patted the boy's head one last time and said, "Stay strong, and never let anyone tell you that you are less." The father finally found his voice. His words shook but were full of emotion. "You didn't just give us shoes and clothes. You gave us back our pride." Keanu smiled. "That was always yours. No one can take it unless you let them. Remember that." The mother stepped forward, her tears still falling. "You gave us hope," she whispered. "We'll never forget this day." Keanu shook his head softly. "Don't remember me. Remember the lesson. Pass it on to others. Show kindness whenever you can. That's how the world changes." The boy suddenly hugged Keanu tightly. "I'll remember," he whispered. Keanu hugged him back, his eyes warm. "That's all I ask," he said. The family then walked away slowly, but this time their steps were not heavy. They walked with pride, with joy, with the strength that comes when someone finally tells you that you matter. Their children laughed as they skipped ahead, and for the first time in a long time, their parents laughed too. Inside the store, the customers slowly began to leave, their minds filled with the image of Keanu standing tall, teaching a lesson without shouting, without anger, just truth. The staff avoided the store owner, who still stood frozen, knowing he would never escape the shame of this day. His wealth, his expensive suits, his polished floor, none of it could erase the fact that he had been defeated by kindness. As Keanu stepped into the sunlight, he adjusted his cap and glasses. Once again, he blended into the crowd, simple and unassuming. But to the family he had helped, and to every witness in that store, he was unforgettable. That day, one poor family walked away with more than new clothes. They carried with them a powerful reminder that dignity cannot be stolen, that kindness has the power to heal wounds deeper than money ever could, and one store owner was left with nothing but regret. The world often remembers the loud and the cruel, but in that quiet act of compassion, Keanu Reeves reminded everyone that true strength is in kindness, and that lesson would echo far beyond the walls of that store, carried in the hearts of those who witnessed it, and especially in the footsteps of a little boy walking proudly in his new shoes.